I'm Natalie, 30 years old, a software engineer who has always longed for my family's recognition. For years, I hoped they would see me, value me, and treat me as an equal. But my sister always, the star in their eyes, never missed a chance to remind me that I was nothing. I thought I could endure it. Until the night everything shattered. It was my parents' 35th wedding anniversary, a backyard celebration I wanted to make truly special. I poured my heart into it. The tables were set neatly, the food was ready, and I had chosen a gift with great care. I thought maybe this would be the moment they finally looked at me with pride. But as I stood to raise my glass for a toast, my sister laughed a sharp, bitter laugh and said, "You are not a part of this family." Her words cut like a knife. I quietly set my glass down, then said something that left the entire room in stunned silence. My mom's face turned pale, my dad's eyes widened, and my sister was struck speechless. The atmosphere grew so heavy that no one could utter a single word. What happened after that changed everything for me, for them, forever. If you've ever been dismissed by your family or made to feel like an outsider, share your thoughts in the comments. I will read every single one and listen to your story. Growing up in Raleigh, I was always the invisible one. Vanessa, my sister, 3 years older, soaked up every ounce of attention like she was born for it. Diane, my mom, and George, my dad, doted on Vanessa, her charm, her confidence, her everything. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I wasn't jealous, not exactly, but it hurt to be overlooked. At the dinner table, I'd listen to Mom rave about Vanessa's school plays or her new hairstyle, while my straight A's barely earned a glance from Dad. By 16, I stopped chasing their approval. I focused on what I could control: my grades, my future. That same year, our world shifted. My dad, a salesman with a knack for closing deals, got laid off when his company downsized. The air at home grew heavy. Mom's worried glances, Dad's forced smiles, Vanessa's complaints about missing out on new clothes. Bills stacked up, and the tension was suffocating. I overheard Mom and Dad arguing about money late at night, their voices sharp through the thin walls. I vowed I'd never let that happen to me. I threw myself into studying, staying up late with textbooks, determined to build a life where I wouldn't have to beg. My effort paid off. I earned a full scholarship to a tech program at NC State, one of the best around. College was my escape, a chance to prove I was more than the quiet kid in Vanessa's shadow. I graduated at 22 with a software engineering degree and landed a job at a Raleigh tech firm. The pay was solid, better than I'd hoped, and I finally felt I was building something real. But things at home hadn't changed. Dad found work again, but it was commission-based, unreliable. Mom, a homemaker, relied on him for everything. Vanessa, freelancing as a graphic designer, was always broke, spending her earnings on clothes or trips. They struggled, and I couldn't just stand by. So I stepped in. It started small, paying the electric bill when it was overdue, covering Mom's car insurance when she said it might lapse. Then it grew. Vanessa called one day, her tone casual, but pointed, asking for a loan to cover rent. "Just this once," she said, but it never stopped. I sent her $500, then $1,000 the next month. It became routine, her asking me, giving no questions. I didn't mind at first. I thought it was what family did. I paid their water bill, covered Dad's car repairs, even sent money for Mom's medical checkups. Over 8 years, I must have spent tens of thousands. Vanessa never thanked me, not once. Instead, she'd make snide remarks, calling me Miss Hotshot when I mentioned a work project, or smirking when I showed up in a new coat. Diane would add her own jab, saying I worked too much, that I should settle down instead of chasing promotions. "You're not getting any younger," Natalie, Diane said, once, her tone sharp enough to sting. Dad was kinder, but he'd just shrug like it was my role to keep them afloat. I told myself it was okay. I was doing well. Promotions came fast. My savings grew, and I loved my job. But every time I sent another payment, a knot tightened in my chest. I was their lifeline, but they didn't see me. To them, I was just the bank, not the daughter or sister who wanted to belong. Vanessa's comments cut deeper each time, and Diane's offhand remarks about my life choices didn't help. I started wondering if they cared about me at all, or just what I could give. Planning their anniversary became my way to show I was part of the family, even if Vanessa and Diane acted like I wasn't. I decided to host the celebration in their Raleigh backyard, picturing a warm summer evening with laughter and shared memories. Knowing no one else would take charge, I dove into planning every detail, hoping it would prove I belonged. Weeks before the event, I started browsing online for ways to make their backyard feel special. I ordered string lanterns to hang above the tables, imagining a cozy glow over the night. For the menu, I picked a local caterer known for Southern comfort food: fried chicken, cornbread, collard greens, and peach cobbler for dessert. It wasn't high-end, but it felt like home. The catering cost $2,000, not counting rentals for tables, chairs, and linens. The biggest expense was the gift: a wicker outdoor furniture set, chairs, and a table perfect for their patio. It cost $3,000, but I knew Mom loved hosting and Dad enjoyed his evening coffee outside. I wanted it to be a gift they'd cherish. To make it a family effort, I suggested we present the furniture as a joint gift. I called Vanessa to discuss it, keeping my tone upbeat. "I'm handling the catering and decorations," I said. "Maybe we can say the furniture's from both of us." Vanessa scoffed over the phone. "Always splashing your money around, huh?" she said, her voice sharp. I swallowed my frustration, hoping she'd warm up to the idea. I didn't want to fight, not when the party meant so much. I spent days coordinating with the caterer, finalizing the menu and arranging delivery times. I rented glassware and white linens to give the tables a polished look, even borrowing a friend's projector to show old photos of Mom and Dad's wedding day. Every detail was meant to celebrate their love story, to show I cared. Vanessa didn't offer to help, not even with small tasks like picking up extra chairs. When I asked if she could pitch in, she snapped, "You've got it all figured out, don't you?" "Natalie," her words stung, but I pushed forward, focusing on the party. Mom was excited when I shared the plans, though she slipped in a jab about how I should spend less time working and more time finding a husband. "You're too focused on your career," Diane said, her tone cutting. Dad just smiled and said it sounded great, his usual quiet support. I kept Vanessa updated, texting her about the menu and lanterns, hoping she'd show some interest. Her replies were curt one-word texts or silence. One evening, I stopped by their house to show Mom napkin samples. Vanessa was there, sprawled on the couch, scrolling her phone. "Going all out, aren't you?" she said, smirking. "What, trying to buy their love?" I gripped the napkins, forcing a calm response. "It's for Mom and Dad," I said. "I thought you'd want it to be special." Vanessa rolled her eyes and went back to her phone. As the party neared, Vanessa's jabs wore me down. I started doubting every choice, wondering if she was right. Maybe I was trying too hard. But I kept going, spending late nights checking the weather forecast, confirming the furniture delivery, and splurging on a bottle of vintage wine for the toast. By the time the party was days away, I'd spent nearly $6,000, mostly from my savings. The cost didn't bother me. I just wanted one night where we felt connected. Vanessa's attitude kept eating at me, though. She hadn't contributed a dime or lifted a finger yet. She twisted my intentions. When I mentioned the furniture set to Mom over coffee, Vanessa overheard and muttered, "Must be nice to have money to burn." Her words cut deep, but I held back, telling myself the party would change things. I thought seeing it all come together might make her see me as family, not just a paycheck. The night of the party started with hope. I'd poured weeks of work and thousands of dollars into making my parents' wedding anniversary perfect. The backyard glowed under the string lanterns. I'd hung the tables set with white linens and Southern dishes, fried chicken, cornbread, peach cobbler, filling the air with familiar comfort. Guests mingled, neighbors and old friends laughing as old wedding photos played on the projector. I stood back, watching Mom smile as she greeted everyone, Dad sipping his coffee by the patio. For a moment, I felt like I'd done something right. Vanessa arrived late, strutting in with a bright dress and a fake smile. I tried to ignore the knot in my stomach, greeting her with a nod. She barely looked at me, grabbing a plate and chatting with guests like she'd planned the whole thing. I busied myself checking the caterers, making sure the wine was chilled for the toast. But Vanessa's presence loomed. Halfway through the evening, as I refilled drinks, she leaned in close, her voice low and sharp. "Still playing the perfect daughter, huh? Too bad you're too busy with your fancy job to find a husband." Her words hit hard, but I forced a smile, not wanting to ruin the night. Guests were watching, and I didn't want a scene. I kept moving, helping Mom serve dessert, ignoring Vanessa's occasional smirks. Dad pulled me aside to thank me quietly, his eyes warm. "This is wonderful," he said, squeezing my shoulder. It felt good, but Vanessa's jabs kept echoing. As the night went on, she got bolder. When a neighbor complimented my tech career, Vanessa laughed loudly. "Oh, Natalie's all about her big shot coding life," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "No time for a real life, though, right?" I clenched my jaw, feeling eyes on me. Mom glanced over but said nothing, her silence louder than Vanessa's words. The moment for the gift arrived. I'd arranged for the wicker furniture set, chairs, and a table sleek and perfect for their patio to be unveiled at the center of the yard. I'd spent $3,000 on it, hoping it'd be a symbol of our family's bond. I stood up, heart racing, and raised my glass for a toast. "Mom and Dad, this is for your 35 years together," I said, gesturing to the covered furniture. "It's from all of us." I glanced at Vanessa, hoping she'd go along with the joint gift idea. Instead, she stood, her face twisted in a sneer. "From all of us," she said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You are not a part of this family, Natalie. You're just showing off with your money." The backyard fell silent. Guests froze, forks clinking against plates. Mom's smile vanished, her eyes darting between us. Dad's coffee cup paused midair, his face pale. I felt my chest tighten, the weight of years paying their bills, swallowing their jabs crashing down. Vanessa's words weren't just an insult. They were a blade cutting me out of the family I'd fought to hold together. I could have crumbled, let the hurt swallow me. But something snapped instead. I raised my glass higher, locking eyes with Vanessa. "Perfect," I said, my voice steady but cold. "Then don't ask me for any more money." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Vanessa's smirk faltered, her eyes narrowing. I turned to the caterer nearby, my hands shaking but my resolve firm. "Split the bill for this party," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Vanessa, Mom, Dad, each of you can cover your share." Mom's jaw dropped, and Dad looked like he'd been punched. Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came out. I set my glass down, grabbed my purse, and walked out, my heels clicking on the patio stones. The night air hit me as I reached my car, my heart pounding. I'd spent years carrying them, and in one moment I'd let it all go. The silence behind me felt heavier than any argument. My apartment, usually a haven, felt empty when I walked in. I dropped my keys on the counter, the sound echoing in the stillness. For years I'd carried their burdens, bills, loans, endless demands, and in one night I'd cut the cord. The freedom was exhilarating, but a hollow ache settled in my chest. I'd stood up for myself, but I was alone. My phone buzzed an hour later. It was Dad, his voice soft and hesitant. "Natalie, I'm sorry," he said. "We didn't mean for things to go like that." I listened, staring at the ceiling, unsure how to respond. He talked about how much the party meant to him and Mom, how they didn't expect me to leave. "We love you," he said, but the words felt heavy, like they came too late. I thanked him, keeping my voice steady, and hung up. Mom called next, her tone shaky. "You didn't have to walk out," she said, almost pleading. Vanessa was out of line. "But we're family." I wanted to believe her, but her silence at the party stung more than Vanessa's insult. "I need time, Mom," I said, ending the call. "Vanessa didn't reach out. No texts, no calls, just silence, as if I'd never existed. I couldn't sleep that night. The high of standing up to Vanessa mixed with a gnawing loneliness. I'd spent years trying to prove I belonged, pouring money and energy into a family that didn't see me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed a break, not just from them, but from the weight of their expectations. The next morning, I opened my laptop and booked a weekend trip to Asheville, a quiet mountain town a few hours away. I craved the cool air, the rolling hills, a place to clear my head. The ticket cost $300, a small price for peace. Back at work, I threw myself into projects, but the ache lingered. A coworker noticed my distraction and suggested therapy. I'd never considered it before, but the idea stuck. I found Dr. Marilyn Ross, my therapist, through a recommendation. Her office in downtown Raleigh was small but warm, with a soft couch and bookshelves packed with titles on healing. In our first session, I sat nervously, unsure where to start. "Why are you here?" Dr. Ross asked, her voice calm but direct. I told her everything: Vanessa's constant jabs, Mom's dismissive comments, Dad's quiet acceptance, the years of paying their bills, the party that broke me. She listened, nodding, jotting notes. "You've been carrying a lot," she said. "What do you want for yourself now?" That question hit me hard. I'd spent so long trying to be the perfect daughter, the reliable sister, that I'd lost sight of my own needs. Dr. Ross helped me see how much I'd sacrificed: my savings, my time, my sense of self, all to win a place in a family that didn't value me. "You can't control how they treat you," she said, "but you can choose how to move forward." I left her office feeling lighter, like I'd started peeling away layers of guilt. The Asheville trip came a week later. I stayed in a small cabin surrounded by mountains that felt steady and unchanging. I hiked trails, breathed in the crisp air, and let myself think. I wasn't angry anymore, not exactly. I was tired, but also hopeful. For the first time, I saw a life where I didn't have to earn love with money or effort. I journaled every night, writing down what Dr. Ross had said, what I wanted. I wanted freedom, not just from their demands, but from the need to prove myself. When I returned, my phone stayed quiet. Vanessa's silence spoke louder than any apology could. Mom called once more, her voice softer. "We miss you," she said, but I wasn't ready to talk. "I'm figuring things out, Mom," I replied, keeping it short. Dad sent a text, simple and kind, but it didn't erase the years of feeling invisible. Dr. Ross's words echoed: "I could choose my path." I started seeing her weekly, unpacking the hurt and building a plan to focus on myself. The loneliness was still there, but it was softer now, mixed with a growing sense of strength. I returned to Raleigh with a quiet resolve to focus on myself, to build a life that wasn't defined by their approval. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe without carrying their weight. Work became my anchor. I'd always loved my job as a software engineer, but I'd let family stress pull me away from it. Now I poured my energy into projects, staying late to refine code and pitching ideas to my team. My manager noticed. A month after the party, she called me into her office. "You've been killing it," she said, offering me a promotion to lead developer. It came with a raise, $10,000 a year, and more responsibility. I accepted, feeling a surge of pride. The promotion wasn't just a title. It was proof I could thrive when I stopped trying to fix everyone else. I shared the news with Ellen, my friend from college, over coffee at a Raleigh cafe. Ellen, always blunt but kind, grinned and raised her mug. "About time you put yourself first," she said. I told her about the party, Vanessa's cruelty, and my decision to walk away. She listened, nodding, then leaned forward. "Don't let them pull you back in," she said. "You've given enough. Keep those boundaries." Her words stuck with me, reinforcing what Dr. Ross had said about choosing my own path. Ellen's support felt like a lifeline, a reminder that I had people who saw me for me, not what I could provide. Life wasn't all work, though. I'd been single for years, too busy with family and career to date. But a coworker introduced me to Steven, my date, at a team happy hour. Steven was a graphic designer, quiet but thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that caught me off guard. We hit it off over drinks, talking about everything from coding to art. Our first real date was at a local brewery, where we laughed about our worst job interviews and swapped stories about growing up in North Carolina. Stephen didn't push or pry when I mentioned my family in passing. He just listened, his calm presence easing the knot I'd carried for so long. Dating him felt like a small, brave step toward a life I hadn't let myself imagine. Inspired by my own journey, I wanted to give back. I'd always loved teaching, so I pitched a project at work, a free coding boot camp for young women in Raleigh, aimed at those from underserved communities. My company loved the idea and gave me a budget of $5,000 to start. I spent weeks planning, reaching out to local schools and community centers to recruit participants. The program would teach Python and web development skills I wished I'd had access to as a teen. I named it Code Forward, a nod to moving ahead despite obstacles. The first session was set to launch in 3 months, and I was already buzzing with ideas for workshops and mentors. My family stayed distant. Mom called occasionally, her voice softer but still hesitant. "We're proud of you," she said once, mentioning my promotion. I thanked her but kept the conversation short. Dad sent a text now and then, simple updates about his garden or work. Vanessa remained silent, her absence loud but not surprising. I didn't reach out either. Dr. Ross had helped me see that their validation wasn't my responsibility. I wasn't angry anymore, just focused on building something new. Ellen checked in regularly, texting to make sure I wasn't slipping back into old patterns. "Stay strong," she'd say, half joking, half serious. Her encouragement kept me grounded, especially when doubts crept in. Stephen, too, became a steady presence. Our dates turned into weekend hikes or quiet evenings cooking together. He didn't know the full story of my family, but he sensed the weight I'd carried. "You seem happier," he said one night, stirring pasta in my kitchen. I smiled, realizing he was right. Code Forward took shape faster than I expected. I recruited a small team of volunteers, including Ellen, who offered to design flyers. The first workshop filled up within days, with 20 young women signed up. I spent evenings preparing lesson plans, excited to share what I'd learned in a world that often felt out of reach for girls like them. I was no longer the invisible daughter, but the woman who chose her own path. Yet as I built this new world, my family faced the fallout of their choices, and I had to decide how or if I'd stay connected. 3 months after the party, I heard through a mutual friend that Vanessa had lost her freelance graphic design gigs. Her habit of splurging on clothes and vacations had caught up with her. Without my financial support, she couldn't cover rent and had to sell her designer bags and a vintage motorcycle she'd bought on a whim. The news didn't surprise me. Vanessa had always lived beyond her means, expecting me to bail her out. I felt a pang of guilt, but it faded quickly. I'd spent years funding her lifestyle only to be called not family. Her silence since the party spoke volumes, and I wasn't about to step back in. Mom called one evening, her voice strained. "Vanessa's struggling," she said, pausing, as if waiting for me to offer help. I listened, sipping tea in my Raleigh apartment, but didn't respond. "We're cutting back too," she added. She and Dad had sold their second car, a pickup truck Dad loved to cover bills. His commission-based job was unsteady, and Mom's budget was stretched thin without my contributions. "We could use some support," Diane said, her tone hesitant but pointed. I took a deep breath, feeling the old pull to fix their problems. "I can't, Mom," I said firmly. "I've done enough." She went quiet, then mumbled something about understanding before hanging up. The call left me shaken but resolute. I wasn't their bank anymore. Dad texted a week later asking to meet for coffee. I agreed, curious but guarded. At a small cafe near my office, he looked tired, his usual warmth dimmed. "We messed up," he said, stirring his coffee. "I should have stood up for you at the party." His apology felt genuine, But it didn't erase the years of silence while I carried their burdens. I nodded, thanking him, but didn't offer more. "I'm building my own life now, Dad," I said. He smiled faintly, saying he was proud, but I could see the weight of their struggles in his eyes. I left the cafe feeling lighter, knowing I'd held my ground. My life, meanwhile, was blooming. Stephen and I were spending more weekends together exploring Raleigh's parks or trying new recipes in my kitchen. He'd started teaching me about graphic design, laughing when I struggled with color palettes. "You're better at code than art?" he teased, kissing my forehead. His support felt effortless, a stark contrast to my family's demands. We weren't rushing things, but being with him made me realize what a real partnership could be: mutual, not one-sided. Code Forward was thriving too. The first cohort of 20 young women had completed their Python course, and their excitement was contagious. One student, a shy 17-year-old, built a simple website for her mom's bakery, beaming when it went live. I spent evenings refining the curriculum, adding lessons on app development. Ellen, who designed our flyers, joined a session to share her marketing expertise. "You're doing something big," she told me after class, her eyes bright. "Don't let anyone take that from you." Her words echoed Dr. Ross's advice, reinforcing my commitment to this new chapter. Vanessa sent a text one day, brief and curt. "Need to talk," it said. I stared at my phone, remembering her sneer at the party. I didn't reply. Dr. Ross had taught me that boundaries weren't just about saying no, they were about protecting my peace. Vanessa's struggles were hers to face, not mine to fix. Mom called again a month later, mentioning they'd downsized to a smaller grocery budget. "We're managing," she said, but her voice hinted at hope I'd step in. "I'm glad you're figuring it out, Mom," I said, keeping my tone neutral. I wasn't cold, just done being their lifeline. As winter settled over Raleigh, I felt a quiet happiness. Stephen and I planned a trip to the coast, and Code Forward secured funding for a second cohort. I wasn't perfect, and some days I missed the idea of my family more than the reality. But I'd learned to choose myself, to build a life that didn't revolve around their approval. I was no longer the invisible one, and that was enough. I carved out my own path. The decision to walk away from my family's demands after that disastrous anniversary party reshaped my world. Raleigh became a city of possibilities, not a reminder of old wounds. I stopped waiting for their calls, stopped hoping for reconciliation. My life was mine now, and the lessons I learned through this journey are ones I want to share with you. Word reached me through a former neighbor that Vanessa was drowning in debt. Her lavish spending, weekend getaways, expensive jewelry had spiraled out of control after her freelance clients dropped her for missed deadlines. She'd pawned her high-end camera equipment, once a source of pride, to cover loan payments. The news didn't stir sympathy. Vanessa's cruel words, "You are not a part of this family," still lingered, a sharp reminder of her dismissal. I'd funneled thousands into her life only to be cast aside. Her struggles were her own now, and I felt no pull to rescue her. Mom and Dad had their own challenges. A friend mentioned they'd traded restaurant dinners for home-cooked meals, cutting corners to stretch their budget. Dad's sales commissions were inconsistent, and Mom had picked up extra shifts at a local bookstore to make ends meet. They'd let go of their weekend golf membership, a small luxury they'd cherished. When Diane called one evening, her voice was heavy. "We're getting by, but it's tough," she said, a subtle hint of expectation in her tone. I sipped coffee in my apartment, feeling the familiar tug of guilt. "I'm sorry, Mom, but I can't help," I said, my voice calm but firm. She sighed, murmuring something about hoping I'd visit soon, then hung up. Dad sent a brief email a week later, checking in. "Doing okay, Dad?" I replied, keeping it short. I loved them, but I wasn't their lifeline anymore. My world, in contrast, was vibrant. Stephen and I were growing closer, sharing quiet mornings at Raleigh's farmers market or laughing over board games. He'd sketch designs while I coded, our passions complementing each other. "You're unstoppable," he said one evening, watching me tweak a website for work. His belief in me felt like a gift, so different from my family's demands. My career as a lead developer was thriving with new projects pushing me to grow. Code Forward. My coding bootcamp for young women had become a beacon of purpose. The second cohort was underway with students creating apps that amazed me. One built a budgeting tool for her family. Ellen, my friend, helped organize workshops, her enthusiasm infectious. "This is your legacy," she told me, grinning as we planned a guest speaker series. Therapy with Dr. Marilyn Ross. My therapist kept me grounded. She'd guided me through the pain of feeling invisible, helping me see that my worth wasn't tied to my family's approval. "Boundaries are your strength," she said, her words a steady reminder. I'd spent years giving too much money, time, energy, only to be overlooked. The party was my breaking point, but it was also my beginning. I learned that loving yourself means saying no even to those you care about. It's not about cutting people off. It's about protecting your peace so you can thrive. The biggest takeaway: you deserve to put yourself first. I used to think family meant sacrificing everything, but I was wrong. Walking away from their expectations freed me to build a life I love. I'm not saying it's easy. Some days I miss the idea of a close family, but I've found something better: a life where I'm enough. I want you to think about your own journey. Have you ever had to set a boundary to protect yourself? Maybe you've carried someone else's weight too long. Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear how you found your way. Your voice matters, and it might inspire someone else to take that first step. As summer warmed Raleigh, I felt rooted. My apartment was filled with books and art I'd collected, with Stephen's small pieces of a life I'd chosen. Code Forward was expanding with plans for a third cohort. I wasn't looking back, only forward. I'd built a world that didn't need my family's approval, and that was my greatest victory.